So in my life, I would say the first, I can't say the first half of my life because who knows where I am in it, but probably the first 30, 30 or so years of my life, most of my spiritual growth was around relationships. I actually find that to be true for a lot of people, that it's our relationships, particularly our romantic or intimate relationships, where we get challenged the most early on. And so a lot of I would often choose men, I would often fall in love with a man's potential and then have a relationship with the dream of that relationship. So I would literally be in relationship with the dream of what it could be instead of the reality of what it was. And that's like probably the most prevalent theme throughout all of my early relationships. And the gift of them, the gift of every single person I was ever involved with, and I see all of them as spiritual change agents today, is that they really forced me to grow. You know, they were the painful relationships with the men who weren't emotionally available, and I thought for sure, you know, they couldn't feel their feelings, and they couldn't be there for me emotionally until, you know, a therapist said to me, did it ever occur to you that maybe you can't feel your feelings and you can't be there emotionally for people? And that was a whole new concept for me. And, you know, and so that man who, quote, couldn't feel his feelings became a catalyst for me looking at my own inability to do that. And so a lot of my relationships were unbalanced as well. A lot of times I would choose partners who weren't ready for their own commitment to consciousness like I was, and I was trying to get them on board, which was a really arrogant and inappropriate thing to do, but I didn't know it at the time. I thought I was being helpful, and, you know, controlling looked like helpful and loving. And so I reached a point in my life, I mean, the truth was I was really afraid of being alone. And so I would rather be in a relationship that wasn't fulfilling than be alone. You know, like a lot of women, I grew up, you know, from generations of women where it was just, it wasn't okay to be alone. And so when I finally had enough therapy under my belt and enough healing under my belt where I said, you know what, something tells me I better be alone for a while if I'm going to find a good relationship, and I finally got my own apartment and moved in and dealt with all of the discomfort of that in the beginning, and then not quickly, it was not quickly, over time began to fall in love with myself and my own place. And then I started to think about meeting a partner, and I started to, you know, face the reality that I was lonely in a different way and that I wanted someone to share my life with. You know, by that point, so this is around 33 or 34, I had a clear history of having intentions, having affirmations, taking actions, and watching miracles unfold in my life. I mean, I have a million examples of how that happened in very powerful ways. And I write a lot about those experiences. And so I decided, you know what, I'm going to take this and I'm going to craft myself a great partner. And I spent 7 days writing about exactly the kind of man I'd like to meet. His physical qualities, intellectual, where he was at financially in his life, spiritually, all the way down to I hope he loves dogs, and, you know, I hope he has dark hair and dark eyes, because I'm so attracted to men with dark hair and dark eyes. My prayer is always, you know, to God, please allow this or something greater to occur. You know, please, if this isn't in my highest and best interest, that's okay. Don't let it happen then. You know, but please may this or something greater occur that supports my highest and best interest. So every day I worked on this list, and then at the end of 7 days I gave it to a close friend and I said, here, have I missed anything? Because you're always going to miss something. And I did, and she helped me to, you know, really tighten up the list. And then I created a treasure map, something I've taught for years, and I took a big poster board and I started to take pictures of men that I thought were attractive out of magazines that kind of fit that profile, and men with dogs, and, you know, men engaged in different the kinds of things that I like to do, and, you know, just this board, sort of like a storyboard of what my life would look like if I were in love with my perfect mate. One night I was sitting in my apartment with a girlfriend of mine who was an actress, and she was going through a magazine that had personal ads in it. And she was reading the different personal ads with different accents as part of her acting training. So she gave it to me, she said, here, you try with an Italian accent. And I suck at that, so I said, you know, I'd open up the magazine and I start to read this one ad, and I say to her, oh my God, this is an amazing ad. She said, read it to me. And I read it to her, and I said, wow, there was something about it that just really hit me. And she said, call it. I said, absolutely not. I'm not calling a personal ad. Are you kidding me? She said, I dare you to call it. I said, no way, I'm not doing it. So I put the magazine down. Every day for 4 days, I picked up that magazine in my apartment and I read that ad, and on the 5th day, I remembered affirmations plus action creates miracles. And I remember where I was standing. I remember the exact phone I used. I picked up the phone and I dialed the box number on the ad. And before I said anything into the recording, I said out loud, this is my prayer to the universe. I'm ready to meet somebody important in my life. I don't know whether it's this person or not, but this phone call is my willingness to take action to make that happen. 2 days later, Michael called. I love the name Michael, by the way, as well. And he called to respond to the ad. And we spoke by phone. I was so nervous. Talked by phone. He sent me his photo. I sent him mine. On the day that we were supposed to meet for dinner, I went to the post office and his photo never arrived. And I thought to myself, God, should I cancel the date and wait for the photo? And I said, nah, just go. And I walked to I went to the restaurant where I was to meet him, and he walked through the door, and I'll never forget, he walked through the door, and I thought, please, God, let that be him. And he walked up to me, and he went, Cheryl, and here I was, this professional speaker, right, this, like, all-together woman, and I went, Michael? Like a little girl. And that night was the first time in my life where I couldn't catch my breath through the whole dinner. As a matter of fact, he started making fun of me. And as I got to know him, I realized he met just about everything on my list except cooking. I forgot to put a man that cooks on my list, which I really want to go on record as saying is an important thing if you don't cook, but no. But honest to God, so that was 13 years ago, and I knew this was the man I was going to marry. It was the best day of my life to marry him. It could make me cry just thinking about it. And that was a powerful example of having a strong affirmation, really being clear about what it is you want, being willing to take the actions to make it happen, and, by the way, really investing in how I needed to grow in order to match that list. And I got, that's what a soulmate really is. And that's, when I look at all of the things that have occurred in my life as a result of my intentions, that's the best one. It's amazing to me how when we create intentions and affirmations from that pure soul place, what we're really calling into our lives are the very things that are meant to assist us on our spiritual journey. I mean, my life is so far different than I could have ever imagined, and I didn't know, like, sometimes we don't know the power of our intentions and our affirmations. And that's why it's so important to listen to that little voice inside. Because, Emmett Fox said it years ago, the great spiritual teacher from the early 1900s, Emmett Fox said, usually our deepest desires are those things that we're the most embarrassed to admit out loud. We don't want to say them out loud, but those are usually the desires of the soul. And when we state them and when we put them in writing and when we start to act on them, there is this divine power that rallies behind us to support our efforts. I mean, I met Michael in 2 weeks. That's pretty quick manifestation, wouldn't you say? But there were a lot of years before that where the lag time was much longer. And you know what? It was the right time. And a lot of times we intend to bring things into our lives into an already too full life. And so sometimes what we need to do is actually make the space. That's actually part of the action plan, is making the space to allow in whatever it is we intend, because too many of us just don't have the space in our lives for that. And that was, something I really did have to create the space. And I also had to look at how deathly afraid I was. I saw marriage as a cage on a very deep level. I saw it as a cage. And little did I know I was living in a cage. And when I met this man, he had the key that opened it. Who would have thought? I would have never thought. The affirmations is just the starting point. That's like going, okay, here's where the goal is. What really gives those affirmations power is the emotion we put behind it. So what's interesting is you start out the journey going, okay, let me start here. Step 1 is what's the affirmation. Step 2 is, how can I generate the emotional power behind that affirmation? And a lot of that comes from taking actions to support that affirmation. That's how you begin to step into that state. And then as you step into that state and you take actions and you put the emotional power behind those affirmations, they begin to manifest themselves in your life. Now you come full circle, and the opposite then becomes true, or really it's just more full circle in that it's more about living in that powerful emotional state and the belief that all that I need is right here in this moment. Love truly is the most powerful force in the world. You know, abundance is our birthright and available to each and every one of us if it's part of our spiritual plan. And so it's living in that emotional and energetic state that is the sort of end. I don't know, it's probably not the end game. We'll see what happens next, right? But it is that, it's that way of being that you get to now live in as a result of the work you did early on, kind of installing those affirmations in your brain. I think of my brain as a computer. I've installed some great software. It plays in the background. I don't even know what it is anymore. I don't even hear the words, but I live in the state of those words as much as I possibly can, and I feel when I'm not living in that state.